Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your Thursday afternoon. This is NYG Jeffy T 85, no longer 3285, because I shot that ball and bricked it over to the side. Goodbye to the 32. NYG Jeffy T 85 is here to stay, and that's what it's going to be like going forward. But today, we'll talk about that another time. Today is all about the Brooklyn Nets and how they're going to be designing their depth chart as well as their roster rotation for this season. And that's just some of the things I want to talk about today, is how will Steve Nash and his coaching staff divide up this Nets rotation heading into this 2022-2023 NBA season. As right now this roster is full of at least about 14 to 16 players, but we pretty much know the key guys that are going to be part of this rotation going forward and who possibly could be starting and who could be earning key minutes off the bench. Obviously, we know that Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and BenSimmons are going to be the biggest benefactors and the biggest keys for this Brooklyn Nets team going into the season, as the Nets are counting on these guys to not only be able to stay healthy, but also continue to be effective and lead this team to where they believe they can go this upcoming season, and that's to possibly be a lower to mid 50 wins team, possibly even 60 if things just really fall into place. As well as, these guys are expected to go out there. Durant and Irving are supposed to expect to go out there and get at least 20 points per game. And, of course, in other aspects, Durant's supposed to be playing that great key defense, as well as being a guy that's going to be able to facilitate the ball and hit those occasional three-point shots and set up his teammates for occasional jump shots or three-point shots that are open over in the corner. Same thing ditto with Kyrie Irving. He's going to be a guy that's going to be one of those facilitators on this team, kicking it out to the three-point shooters, as well as trying to drive to the basket, getting fouled, or even getting some of those easy back layups right near the basket. That's what Kyrie Irving's job is going to be. And then BenSimmons' main job that he's going to be doing is BenSimmons is pretty much going to be the guy. You don't have to worry about him scoring. BenSimmons is going to be the guy out there that's going to be that defensive stopper. You can play him anywhere on the court. You can play him at point guard, shooting guard. You can even play him up against the bigger guys like a small forward or a power forward, possibly even match him up against a center if need be. He's the guy that's going to be thrown all over there on that defensive side. So those three guys are definitely going to be starting. Would expect to see Irving as the starting point guard, probably Durant as the small forward. BenSimmons could possibly be the shooting guard or maybe even be the power forward, depending on where Steve Nash and his coaching staff want to line up BenSimmons going forward. But those are definitely three guys that will be involved in the starting rotation. And, of course, the other two guys I expect to fill out that rotation, I think Nick Claxton, with the fact that they don't have guys like there's no longer an Andre Drummond. He's gone out of here, as well as a Blake Griffin and a LaMarcus Aldridge. Though both those guys are no longer part of the new Brooklyn Nets team, they're out of here. So it's pretty much Nick Claxton, who was re-signed to a contract at the end of during the offseason to about a 2 or 3 year, $40 million contract. He's the de facto starting center. The Nets like what they've seen so far in Claxton. All he has to do is continue to improve his offensive game as well as continue to improve on his foul shooting. Claxton has already started to become a better defensive player overall, and he's got solid length. Just needs to fill out a little bit more in terms of his body weight and his size to maybe become a better inside force on that defensive and offensive side of the court. So those are guys I'm expecting to be in there. And the shooting guard position, it could be something where it might be up in the air of who that's going to get that starting shooting guard spot. But most likely, I believe, Joe Harris, if he's deemed 100%, which right now reports are, Joe Harris right now is deemed 100%, and he's ready to come back to that Brooklyn Nets rotation. So I expect him to be that starting shooting guard. So I expect the starting lineup for the Brooklyn Nets to get most of the attention, and each of these guys to play at least 20, 25 plus minutes per game. Kyrie Irving at the point guard, Joe Harris at shooting guard, Kevin Durant at small forward, BenSimmons at power forward, Nick Claxton at center. Those will be your starting five guys most likely for this Nets rotation to begin the season, hopefully throughout the rest of the season, barring any injuries. And some of the key guys you're expecting to come off the bench, Patty Mills, I think, is definitely, if the Nets signed him as well to an extension, I believe it was a 3-year, $25 million deal. He's going to be coming back and being that reserve point guard off the bench. He's going to be a guy that's pretty much going to be counted on for maybe about 10, 15 minutes a game. Go out there, be able to provide some playmaking ability on the outside, hit those occasional three-point shots, which he can be, give the Nets some tough offensive good minutes on the court. Patty Mills, I think, was just pretty much burnt out for after all the playing time he got last year. So I think this year Patty Mills is going to take advantage of the opportunities in front of him, go out there and be able to provide this Nets team with solid 10-15 minutes of point guard play over there. And Seth Curry, I expect Seth Curry to be another guy to go out there. He's going to be your other three-point shooter that Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and BenSimmons are going to be looking for on the outside, ditto like a Joe Harris. Seth Curry is going to be that reserve shooting guard who's going to be spotting up behind the three-point line, looking to get those open shots, as well as being able to take some of those contested three-point shots and even some mid-range shots over the middle. He even has the ability to be able to drive to the basket and occasionally hit those shots and draw fouls. That's Seth Curry's role. He's going to be the main guy off the bench at that shooting guard position. And unless Joe Harris struggles, maybe Seth Curry even gets some starter minutes depending on what's going on with Harris at that shooting guard position, as I believe the shooting guard right now is the most open position in terms of who could grab that starting spot over there at that. But I still believe Joe Harris will have the upper hand. Seth Curry, though, he will get at least his 15, possibly even like 19 to 20 minutes of occasional playing time, depending on how the rest of the lineup goes about it. Or if the Nets occasionally want to play small ball and if they want to take Nick Claxton out for a little bit, you might see Seth Curry being the biggest benefactor in terms of getting that playing time. Royce O'Neal is another guy who the Nets acquired from the Utah Jazz for a first-round pick this past offseason. I expect Royce O'Neal to come in there. He's going to be that 3-and-D guy. Look out for Royce O'Neal to be able to be that guy that the Nets were looking for when they have guys like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and BenSimmons out there. Royce O'Neal is going to be a guy who will come off the bench, possibly could even start depending on what kind of lineup SteveNash wants to throw out there. Royce O'Neal is going to be the guy that's going to be out there on the wing, guarding some of those elusive shooting guards and small forwards that can drive to the basket or even get some of those spot-up shots or three-point shots. Royce O'Neal is going to be one of those guys who's going to be counting to be out there, and he will also occasionally hit that three-point shot. And I believe he was one of the most valuable pickups this team got this offseason, especially with the fact that Durant, Irving, and Simmons will still be here this upcoming season. So I really believe that Royce O'Neal was a big-time pickup for this team. I think he'll also get about 12 to 15 minutes coming off the bench for this team going forward, being that key small forward for the Nets in case they need to spell some of their starters out there. TJ Warren is another guy. TJ Warren is a guy that I've really liked for the past few years when he played over in Phoenix as well as when he played in Indiana. The guy has potential and he's shown it already to be an 18 to 20 point scorer when he has the opportunity to play. Problem is this guy has been dealing with foot injuries, knee injuries that pretty much have kept him sidelined for a lot of time. But I'm expecting a guy like TJ Warren to go out there and pretty much be able to pick up the slack for the Brooklyn Nets and be that guy that can be a 15 to 17 point scorer off the bench. I think if he's healthy, they might gradually ease him into the lineup, maybe pick up his minutes depending on how he's playing. He's going to be your guy that they're going to be looking for to provide that scoring punch off the bench when you have to sit guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for a good amount of time. So I expect TJ Warren to be the biggest benefactor when it comes to those scoring opportunities. And then, of course, you have some of these other guys on the bench, like a Markieff Morris and a Yuta Wannabe. Two guys that Nets picked up late this offseason. They picked them up a few weeks ago as enforcers and front court help for this Brooklyn Nets team. That right now, they're dealing with a lot of younger players right now. But you added Markieff Morris, who's not going to go out there. He's going to score and light up the scoreboard. He is about 32 years old. He's probably not the same player he was before, but he's going to give you the tough physical minutes inside, maybe about 8 to 10 minutes max. They're going to try to make sure they maintain his body and make sure they don't put him out there too long because of the fact that he is an older player there on the court. But he's going to provide some of that inside defensive presence as well as provide that toughness that the Nets have lacked and needed in the boards as well as from the front court press aspect for a long time. So expect Markieff Morris to be a biggest benefactor in helping that front court in case young guys like Nick Claxton and Deron Sharpe will get to him a little bit, struggle a little bit in terms of, getting out-physicaled and outmaneuvered by some of these other centers in the NBA. So I expect Markieff Morris to play about 8 to 10 minutes. And Yuta Wannabe, he's another guy that's going to be provided at least about 5, 7, 8 minutes in that inside court to give that net some depth at the front court, at the 4, possibly even the 5. Maybe they could even have him play at the 3. Not going to expect a whole lot from this guy. He's also really a three-point shooter, mostly. Not going to give you a whole lot on the defensive end of the aspect. He can rebound at times, but he's pretty much a guy that's just going to provide some of that depth, depth inside scoring, maybe occasionally hit you that three-point shot. Not going to play a whole lot. Have to see how he's going to be able to progress out there. But he is a solid signing for this team for the depth reasons. Now, of course, the young guys. The young guys on this team are going to be the biggest X factors on how much they might play. And I'm talking about guys like Cam Thomas, Durant Sharp, David Duke Jr., and Kessler Edwards. All these guys at times played big minutes for this team in different parts of the season. Cam Thomas, at the beginning of the season, he had a stretch where he was scoring about 15 to 18 points per game, sometimes 20. He actually had 20 points for about 10 games so far this season. Shout out to my guy Breezy. Big time Nets Breezy. He's also been calling this stuff as well. Shout out to him. One of the good best Nets content creators out there. If you haven't already, make sure you go sub up to his channel. He's also been talking about this stuff when it comes to Cam Thomas and how this guy can light up the scoreboard when he gets the opportunity. Problem is, he's a liability in other parts of the aspect of his basketball game. So if he wants to be able to get out there and be able to provide some more minutes, he needs to get out there and play well. But I think Cam Thomas, out of all the young players, has got the best opportunity to maybe carve out a role of about 10, 12 minutes per game for this Nets team, possibly even more if some of the veterans on this team can struggle at times with their shooting or defensive play. Cam Thomas is the guy that I'm going to look for as being the X factor, depending on how many minutes he's going to get, that could carve out a niche in this roster, because his scoring ability is not something you want to keep on the bench for too long. And as well as my guy Breezy said, he's a guy that was actually third on this team. He was the third scorer on this Nets team behind Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in terms of guys that could just put the ball in the basket when the Nets needed it. So look for a guy like Cam Thomas that can go in there, and if he's able to fix up the rest of his game, like his defensive play, his rebounding, as well as, being able to be efficient outside on the court, besides his scoring prowess, this guy will be able to play more for the Nets and could be an X factor. Durant Sharp I look at as a guy who's probably going to be looked at as the backup center. Maybe the Nets decide to throw him in the G League for a little bit. I think he's going to pretty much get about 6 to 9 minutes per game, if that. I don't know how much the Nets are going to be rotating Durant Sharp in. I know the Nets like him right now because he provides some good size, about 6'10", about 240, 250 pounds. He's still working on his offensive game. He has the ability to be a decent shot blocker. Had about a block and a half per game for the Nets in the G League, as well as when he played in the regular season. He has had games of about 10-plus rebounds before, but I want to see how this guy can go out there and play when he has the ability to have those consistent minutes, because the Nets might be using this guy as their backup center behind Nick Claxton. So I think he'll get at least about 6 to 8, maybe 9 minutes, possibly 10 per game to start, but I really believe that Durant Sharp is going to be a developmental guy going forward. David Duke Jr. and Kessler Edwards, these guys are also wild cards out there, but I just don't know how much playing time they're really going to be, because the Nets, for the first time since the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have come onto this team, they're deep. The Nets have a lot of players right now that could go out there and provide some depth on this roster. I mean, I just named it before. You got the 5 guys in the starting the 5 guys in the starting rotation with Kyrie Irving, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, BenSimmons, Nick Claxton. They're probably going to get a majority of the minutes. Then I also said guys like T.J. Warren, Royce O'Neal, Seth Curry, and Patty Mills, and possibly Cam Thomas. That's 10 guys right there that might get a majority of the playing time, and that's not even including guys like Markieff Morris, as well as Wheeler, as well as Yuta Wanabia. Those are other guys that could get some play. So that's a 12-man rotation. And I have a feeling maybe depending on the opponent that the Nets are playing, they could rotate guys in and out. Some guys maybe get more minutes. Some guys maybe get less minutes. It's really going to depend on the opponent the Nets are going to play. But right now, I expect, in terms of the rotation for the Nets, I think they're going to go about 8 to 9 strong. And depending on who they're playing, if they're playing a bigger team with more size in the front court, I'm expecting to see maybe guys like Markieff Morris, Yuta Wanabia, as well as maybe a Durant Sharp get a couple of more minutes in there to provide that big-time bulk in the middle of the court, as well as T.J. Warren. Whereas if the Nets are playing maybe a little bit of a smaller team, if they want to maybe go small ball, expect guys like Patty Mills, Seth Curry, even like a Cam Thomas to possibly get more of those minutes for the Nets going forward. So it's really going to be a mix and match. But that's where SteveNash, as I made in my 3-minute warning video a couple of days ago, SteveNash is going to have to become better when it comes to his rotational designs for this team going forward. He's going to have to be able to make sure he manages rotation better, because that's the problem that happened with this team last year in the playoffs. So I really believe that The Nets are probably going to go with at least about an 8 to 9 man rotation, possibly 10. And I really believe the minutes are going to be divided up. But the starters are going to get at least about, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and BenSimmons, expecting these guys to play at least about 28, 30, 35 minutes per game because, they're the stars on the team. I think Joe Harris is going to play around close to 28, 30 minutes per game, maybe a little less, especially when he's coming off 2 major injuries. They'll manage his minutes. Claxton, I think, will play about 20, 25 minutes, maybe close to 30, depending on how he looks on the court. Patty Mills, Seth Curry, Royce O'Neal, TJ Warren, I think they'll get the second most minutes. Expect about 10, maybe 15, possibly 18 minutes per game. Some of them could play about 20, depending on how the how the matchups dictate themselves and depending on the opponent they play. Markieff Morris will give them about 8 to 10 minutes. Same thing with a guy like TJ Warren. Yuta Wannabe, I would expect maybe about 6 to 8 minutes. And Cam Thomas, I think he's going to play about maybe 5 to 15 at most. Guys like David Duke Jr., Deron Sharp, Kessler Edwards, I'd even talk about a guy like Edmund Sumner, who's also coming off an injury, who the Nets brought in this offseason. He's looking to make some minutes as well for this team going forward. The Nets, for the first time, have depth. For the first time in a long time, this Nets roster has good depth. So they can mix and match depending on what the matchup is and what the matchup dictates from game to game. And obviously when they get towards the playoff time, where this is where it's all going to be about. The Nets have depth, and they can operate depending on who their opponent is and who they want to see if they want to play more minutes on how the match dictates himself. But the Nets, it's going to be interesting to see how Steve Nash and his coaching staff divide up the minutes between their players right now on this roster. But I'm expecting a lot of guys to be playing minutes, and I think they're going to be going with at least an 8, possibly 9 or 10 man rotation for this season to keep everybody fresh, especially when your stars have had some issues staying healthy throughout the season. So I'm expecting at least a 10-man rotation at most, and maybe as we get closer to the middle or the end of the season, Steve Nash might be able to start shortening his up rotation depending on who's playing the best and who's how the matchups look going into the playoffs, towards the middle of April, May, June, around playoff time. So that's just my video I want to make for you guys today for the Brooklyn Nets and how they're going to be dividing up the rotation, who's going to be starting, who's going to be the back, the depth guys, how many minutes they're going to be divided up during the season, etc., and what key guys can be playing key roles off the bench going forward for this team. Obviously, injuries are going to factor into everything, so we'll have to see what's going to happen going forward with this Nets team. But I'm excited as a Nets fan. The drama's been put aside, and this Nets team has depth, and I'm really curious to see how the coaching staff, and especially how Steve Nash manages his rotation for this basketball team going into the season starting next month in late October. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. And if you have not already, please subscribe to NYG Jeffy T 85 for more videos around the roster, injuries, as well as chatter, and any news around the Brooklyn Nets. And if you haven't already, make sure to turn on the notifications on when the next video or short is going to be dropping on the channel. And let me know in the comments section about what you would like to see for this Brooklyn Nets rotation going into this season. What guys you want to see be able to play more minutes during the game, how you would divide up the minutes for each player in this game, and how many players you would like to see in this Nets rotation, and depending on the matchups that the Nets have during the season against whichever teams. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Thursday afternoon. Take it easy, and let's go Brooklyn Nets. We're almost there, a month away. Exciting times around the Nets. Let's go out there and see if this Nets team can deliver us a long playoff run and possibly an NBA championship. Let's go Brooklyn Nets. NetsWorld, everyone.